The space station floating near the edge of the galaxy looked like a giant crystal flower blooming in the darkness. Inside its gleaming halls walked beings from 17 different star systems. They all had one thing in common: they were the smartest creatures their worlds had ever produced. Dr. Zaravel Nash stood in the main laboratory staring at screens, full of numbers and symbols. Her body was made of living crystal that sparkled blue and silver under the lights. She had been working on the same problem for 200 years of her 400-year life. The other scientists called it the Void Equation. Next to her floated Commander Lyra Thorne. Lyra looked like she was made of flowing water and light. Her people came from a place where matter and energy mixed together. She could think about 50 different things at the same time. Right now, all 50 thoughts were focused on the same impossible math problem. The Void Equation was the key to everything the galaxy wanted. If someone could solve it, the ships could travel between stars in days instead of years. Planets could talk to each other instantly across the void of space. Wars would end because everyone could reach everyone else quickly. But there was a catch. Every time someone tried to use the old equations for fast travel, bad things happened. Ships disappeared into nowhere. Planets got torn apart by space storms. Entire solar systems sometimes just stopped existing. Zara touched one of the floating screens with her crystal finger. The numbers changed color, but still made no sense. She had tried every approach her people knew. The Zephyrians were famous across the galaxy for their math skills. Their crystal brains could hold more information than most planets had libraries. Lyra made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. It meant she was frustrated. Her people, the ethereals, could see patterns in reality that others missed. They thought in ways that solid beings could not understand. But even their strange minds could not crack this puzzle. Behind them, other scientists worked at their own stations. There was Dr. Kent from the collective. His people shared one giant mind across their whole species. When Kents thought about something, millions of other beings thought about it too. They had processing power that could simulate entire universes. Dr. Yulin represented the ancients. Her people had been traveling between stars when most others were still living in caves. They had written the first equations for bending space and time. Their knowledge went back 50,000 years. All of them had failed. The problem was not just hard, it seemed impossible. The math worked perfectly on paper. Every calculation said the new drive should work without problems, but every test ended in disaster. Something was missing from their understanding. Zara walked to the center of the lab, where a huge hologram showed their latest attempt. The display was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Swirling galaxies of numbers danced in three-dimensional space. Energy patterns flowed like rivers of light. At the center was a dark spot where the math simply stopped working. That dark spot had killed more brilliant minds than any war in galactic history. Not killed in body, but killed in spirit. The greatest thinkers in known space had looked into that mathematical void and found nothing. Some had gone insane trying to understand it. Others had simply given up and found new careers. The Galactic Science Consortium had tried everything. They built computers the size of moons. They created thinking machines that could process information faster than light. They even asked the mystics of Altair, who claimed they could see the future. Nothing worked. Lyra drifted closer to the hologram. Her ethereal form passed right through some of the floating equations. As she moved, the math displays rippled like water. Even her presence could affect reality in small ways. But she could not affect this problem. The equations were like a lock, with no key. Every part fit together perfectly except for one piece that should not exist. The mathematics said that faster-than-light travel was impossible and possible at the same time. It was like trying to find a number that was both odd and even. Dr. Kent approached them. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millions of minds thinking together. The sound was like an entire choir speaking in perfect harmony. He said that his people had run the calculations through every quantum computer in their space. The result was always the same. mathematical perfection that led to physical impossibility. Dr. Yilin joined them. Her ancient voice carried the wisdom of ages. She explained that her people had faced this same problem when they first tried to build their star drives. They had solved it somehow, but the knowledge was lost in a great war 20,000 years ago. Only fragments remained. The four scientists stood together looking at their failure. Each represented the peak of intelligence for their species. Together they had more knowledge than most civilizations accumulated in their entire existence. But they were beaten by a problem that seemed designed to mock their efforts. Outside the laboratory windows, stars slowly moved past. The station was traveling at normal speeds toward a small yellow star in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. Long-range scans had detected radio signals from the third planet. Another species was just beginning to reach into space. Maybe these new beings would have fresh ideas. Maybe their primitive minds would see something that advanced civilizations had missed. It was a desperate hope, but the only one they had left. Zara made a decision that would change everything. She activated the communication system and sent a message to the other council members. It was time to make contact with Earth. Casey Thompson was having the worst Monday in recent memory. She had slept through 3 alarms and woke up 20 minutes after her bus left. The coffee shop where she usually grabbed breakfast was closed for repairs. Now she was late for her shift at Mel's Corner Deli, and her manager would probably give her another lecture about responsibility. She pushed through the front door of the small restaurant and tied her apron around her waist. The lunch rush would start soon, and she needed to prep the sandwich station. Casey moved with practiced efficiency, even though her mind was somewhere else entirely. At 23 years old, Casey had a degree in applied mathematics from Portland State University. She was supposedly working on her master's thesis about quantum mechanics and probability theory. The truth was she had not opened her research notes in 2 months. The whole thing seemed pointless and boring. Making sandwiches was simple and relaxing. There were no impossible equations to solve. No professors asking when she would finish her thesis. No pressure to change the world or prove how smart she was. Just bread and meat and vegetables arranged in ways that made people happy. The morning passed quietly. A few regular customers came in for coffee and pastries. Mrs. Chen from the flower shop next door ordered her usual turkey sandwich with extra pickles. The mailman stopped by for a quick lunch between deliveries. Casey worked automatically while her mind wandered. She thought about the math problem she had seen in her textbook the night before. Something about dimensional analysis and energy conservation. The solution had seemed obvious, but she had not bothered to write it down. Why should she work harder when she was already getting good grades with minimal effort? Around noon, the sky outside began to change. At first it looked like storm clouds gathering, but the light was wrong. Instead of gray and black, the clouds were silver and blue. They moved in patterns that defied the wind. Other people on the street stopped to stare upward. Some took out their phones to record what they were seeing. Casey glanced up from the sandwich she was making, but did not think much about it. Portland had weird weather sometimes. Then the light in the deli shifted. The air itself seemed to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Casey looked up from her work and saw 2 figures materializing near the front counter. The first visitor was clearly not human. Her body looked like it was carved from blue crystal. Light passed through her in strange ways, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. She was tall and elegant, with features that were almost human, but not quite. The second figure was even stranger. She appeared to be made of flowing energy, rather than solid matter. Her form shifted and changed as Casey watched. Sometimes she looked like a woman made of starlight. Other times, she seemed to be part of the air itself. Most people would have screamed or fainted, or at least dropped what they were holding. Casey just looked at them with the same mild annoyance she usually reserved for customers who ordered complicated sandwiches. During the lunch rush, the crystal woman stepped forward and spoke. Her voice sounded like music played on instruments Casey had never heard before. The words that came out were English, but the accent was unlike anything from Earth. She introduced herself as Dr. Zara Vel Nash and said she was looking for the greatest mathematical minds on Earth. Her companion was Commander Lyra Thorne from something called the Galactic Science Consortium. They needed help with an important problem. Casey finished cutting the sandwich she was working on and looked at the clock. It was barely past noon, and she still had 5 hours left on her shift. She really did not want to deal with whatever this was. She told the visitors that they had the wrong place. If they wanted smart people, they should try the universities. MIT was famous for mathematics. Harvard was closer, but still on the wrong side of the country. She could give them directions if they wanted. Dr. Vel Nash seemed confused by Casey's response. She explained that they faced a mathematical challenge that had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy for 300 years. They were hoping that a fresh perspective might help them find a solution. Casey shrugged and said she had barely passed calculus. Twice. She was not the kind of person who solved important problems. She made sandwiches and tried to avoid doing more work than absolutely necessary. The alien scientist looked frustrated. She seemed to think that all humans should be excited about meeting visitors from space. Maybe most people would be, but Casey had always been different. She did not get excited about much of anything. Dr. Vel Nash made what would later be remembered as the most important mistake in galactic history. To prove how difficult their problem was, she activated a holographic projector. The air above Casey's sandwich station filled with glowing symbols and equations. The math was beautiful in a complicated way. Numbers and symbols danced in three-dimensional space. Energy patterns flowed like streams of light. At the center of it all was something that hurt to look at directly. Casey glanced up at the display while taking a bite of her turkey sandwich. She had made it exactly the way she liked. Turkey and Swiss cheese with lettuce, tomato, and pickles on wheat bread. The mustard and mayo were perfectly balanced. As she chewed, she let her eyes wander over the floating equations. The math was more advanced than anything she had studied in school, but the basic structure was familiar. It reminded her of problems she had seen in her quantum mechanics textbook. The aliens were trying to solve for something called X in what they called normal space. But Casey could see immediately that X did not exist in normal space when you were dealing with void mathematics. The whole approach was backwards. She swallowed her bite of sandwich and pointed at the hologram with a pickle. The solution was actually pretty simple once you stopped thinking about it the wrong way. You had to flip the entire equation into negative dimensional space and solve for Y instead. X became a dependent variable. The silence that followed was so complete that Casey could hear the refrigerator humming in the back room. Dr. Vel Nash stared at her with an expression of complete shock. Commander Thorne pulled out a device that looked like it was made of crystallized lightning. Both aliens began running calculations. Their devices beeped and flashed as they processed Casey's suggestion. The crystal woman started making sounds like breaking glass. The energy woman flickered like a candle in the wind. Casey finished her sandwich and started cleaning the counter. She had 3 more hours on her shift, and her manager would be upset if he came back to find the place messy. She really hoped these visitors would finish their light show soon so she could get back to work. The aliens kept staring at their calculations. Whatever they were seeing seemed to surprise them. Casey wondered if she had said something wrong. Maybe she had misunderstood their problem, but she was pretty sure her solution would work. It was like they were trying to find the center of a donut by looking at the donut instead of looking at the hole. Sometimes the answer was not in the thing itself. Dr. Vel Nash had lived for 400 years and had never experienced anything like this moment. Her crystalline brain, which could process information faster than most computers, was struggling to accept what she was seeing. The calculations running on her quantum processor showed results that should have been impossible. Commander Thorne flickered between solid and energy states as her excitement grew. Her ethereal form was having trouble maintaining stability. The math was working. After 3 centuries of failure, the solution had been handed to them by a human who made sandwiches. For a living, Casey wiped down the counter and glanced at the clock again. Her manager would be back from his lunch break soon, and he got cranky when strange things happened in the deli. Last month, a street performer had brought in a juggling routine, and her manager had banned all entertainment from the premises. The energy requirements for faster-than-light travel had dropped by almost 90%. The spatial distortion effects that had destroyed so many test ships were now negligible. The dangerous feedback loops that had torn apart entire solar systems simply disappeared when you approached the problem from Casey's direction. Dr. Val Nash ran the calculations 3 more times to be sure. Each result was the same. The human had solved their greatest challenge while eating lunch. She had done it so casually that she seemed annoyed by the interruption to her meal. Casey started restocking the napkin dispensers. She moved with the same methodical efficiency she applied to everything in her life. There was something almost meditative about simple, repetitive tasks. They helped her think clearly, without the pressure of having to think about important things. The crystal alien finally found her voice again. She asked Casey how she had seen what the greatest minds in the galaxy had missed. 17 different species had worked on this problem. They had processing power that could simulate entire universes. They had knowledge that went back 50,000 years. Casey shrugged without looking up from her work. She said she did not really know. The aliens had been making the problem too complicated. It was like when her little sister tried to do homework by memorizing the entire textbook. Instead of just thinking about what the question was actually asking, Commander Thorne moved closer to the counter. Her form solidified as she focused her attention. She asked about the mathematical complexity of the solution. Surely Casey understood that she had just revolutionized their understanding of dimensional physics, Casey said. It was not really that complex. The aliens had all the right pieces, but they had arranged them in a weird way. It was like trying to build furniture by following pictures, instead of reading what the pictures were actually showing you. Dr. Val Nash felt something crack inside her crystalline mind. Not from damage, but from a fundamental shift in how she understood intelligence itself. This human was suggesting that the Galactic Science Consortium had simply been overthinking the problem. Casey finished with the napkins and started checking the vegetable supplies. They were running low on tomatoes and would need to prep more lettuce before the dinner rush. She made mental notes about what needed to be done while half listening to the aliens talk among themselves. The visitors were using words she did not recognize, but their tone was excited. They kept pointing at their devices and making sounds that might have been laughter or surprise. Casey was glad they seemed happy, but she really hoped they would finish soon. A regular customer came in and ordered a ham sandwich. Casey made it quickly while the aliens continued their discussion. The customer paid and left without seeming to notice the 2 otherworldly beings standing near the counter. Maybe he thought they were part of some new advertising campaign. Dr. Val Nash asked Casey if she realized what she had done. The solution she had provided would change everything. Ships could now travel between stars safely. Communication across the galaxy would become instant. Entire civilizations would benefit from her insight. Casey said that was nice, but could they move their light show somewhere else? She still had 3 hours left on her shift, and her manager got upset about weird stuff happening during business hours. The health department was already suspicious about their food handling practices. Commander Thawne wanted to know more about Casey's background. What universities had she attended? What advanced degrees did she hold? How had Earth produced such a brilliant mathematical mind without the galactic community knowing about it? Casey explained that she had a bachelor's degree from Portland State and was supposedly working on her master's thesis, but she had not opened her research notes in months because the whole thing seemed boring and pointless. She preferred making sandwiches because the problems were simpler and someone got fed at the end. The aliens exchanged looks that Casey could not interpret. Dr. Val Nash asked why Casey had not pursued a career in mathematics or physics. With her obvious talent, she could have been working on the most important problems in science. Casey said she had tried that for a while, but it was too much pressure. Everyone expected her to work hard and discover important things and change the world. She just wanted to do her job and go home and watch television shows about people with more interesting lives than hers. Another customer entered the deli. This one wanted a complicated sandwich with specific instructions about how everything should be arranged. Casey focused on getting the order exactly right, while the aliens continued their excited discussion. Dr. Vel Nash was reviewing the implications of Casey's solution. The mathematical principles could be applied to dozens of other unsolved problems. Energy generation, planetary terraforming, disease treatment. The possibilities seemed endless. Casey finished the complicated sandwich and handed it to the customer. She noticed that the aliens were still standing around looking amazed. She wondered if they needed directions to somewhere else, or if they were planning to stay in the deli all afternoon. Commander Thorne asked if Casey would consider joining the Galactic Science Consortium. They could offer her resources and opportunities beyond anything available on Earth. She could work with the greatest minds in known space on problems that would benefit entire civilizations. Casey said that sounded like a lot of work. She was happy where she was. The benefits were decent, and she got free lunch. Plus, she did not really want to move to another planet. Portland was nice, and all her stuff was here. The aliens seemed unable to understand her response. They had just offered her a chance to reshape the galaxy, and she was worried about leaving her belongings behind. Dr. Vel Nash asked if Casey truly preferred making sandwiches to advancing the cause of science. Casey thought about it while she cleaned the soda machine. Making sandwiches was peaceful and straightforward. You followed simple steps and created something that made people happy. Science seemed to involve a lot of stress and pressure, and meetings with people who took themselves too seriously. She said she liked solving problems, but preferred ones that stayed solved. Math problems just led to more math problems. Sandwiches were different. Once you made a good sandwich, it was done and someone enjoyed eating it. The aliens left soon after that, but Casey had a feeling they would be back. News traveled fast through the galaxy when you had faster-than-light communication systems. Within 6 hours of Casey's casual revelation, every major scientific institution in known space had received reports about the human who solved the void equation while eating lunch. Dr. Vel Nash found herself fielding calls from colleagues she had not spoken to in decades. The Crystalline Academy wanted detailed reports. The Ethereal High Council demanded immediate verification. Even the reclusive ancients had emerged from their deep space libraries to ask questions. Meanwhile, Casey was finishing her shift at Mel's Corner Deli, completely unaware that she had become the most famous human in galactic history. She cleaned the sandwich station, wiped down the tables, and counted the register, exactly as she did every day. Her manager returned from his extended lunch break and asked if anything interesting had happened. Casey said no, not really. A couple of street performers had come in with elaborate costumes and light effects, but they had left without ordering anything. The next morning brought the first wave of alien visitors. Ships began appearing in Earth orbit at a rate that made the International Space Station very nervous. The governments of Earth were hastily trying to figure out how to handle first contact with not one, but dozens of different species. Casey heard about it on the radio while getting ready for work. The news reporter sounded excited and worried at the same time. They kept talking about historic moments and new eras for humanity. Casey turned off the radio and caught the bus to downtown Portland. Dr. Vel Nash was waiting outside the deli when Casey arrived. The crystal alien had spent the night running more calculations, and each result confirmed what she already knew. The human had revolutionized their understanding of dimensional mathematics with a few casual observations. Casey unlocked the front door and let herself in. Dr. Velnash followed, asking if they could continue their conversation from the previous day. Casey said sure, but she had to prep for the morning rush and could not spend too much time talking. The alien scientist wanted to understand how Casey had developed her insights. Had she studied advanced dimensional theory? Did Earth have SECRET research programs that the galaxy had overlooked? How had one human accomplished what entire civilizations could not? Casey started the coffee machine and began arranging pastries in the display case. She said she had not really studied anything special. Math had always seemed pretty straightforward to her. Most problems had simple solutions, if you did not overthink them. Dr. Velnash pulled out a portable holographic projector and displayed another unsolved equation. This one dealt with energy generation from cosmic background radiation. Her people had been working on it for 50 years without success. Casey glanced at the floating symbols while counting bagels. The structure looked familiar, even though the specific variables were different. She could see where the energy flow patterns were being disrupted by unnecessary complexity. She suggested flipping the collection matrix and using harmonic resonance instead of direct absorption. The cosmos was constantly vibrating at specific frequencies. Instead of trying to capture energy, you could tune into those vibrations and amplify them. Dr. Velnash ran the calculations and nearly dropped her projector. The efficiency ratings were incredible. The energy output was almost limitless. Casey had just solved another problem that had stumped galactic science for decades. Other customers began arriving for their morning coffee. Casey served them with her usual efficiency while Dr. Velnash stood nearby looking stunned. The alien scientist was beginning to understand that yesterday had not been a lucky accident. Commander Thorne materialized near the counter during the mid-morning lull. Her ethereal form was more stable today, but she still flickered when she got excited. She wanted to discuss the implications of Casey's discoveries. Casey was restocking the sandwich ingredients and only half listening. She said the aliens seemed to have a habit of making things harder than they needed to be. Sometimes the best solutions were the ones that felt too simple to work. Commander Thorne asked Casey to look at a third problem. This one involved terraforming planets to make them suitable for life. The process currently took hundreds of years and required enormous amounts of resources. Casey studied the holographic display while slicing tomatoes. The aliens were trying to change entire planetary atmospheres all at once. That seemed like the hard way to do things. Why not start small and let natural processes do most of the work? She suggested using engineered microorganisms that could survive in hostile environments. Start with small colonies that gradually changed their local conditions. As they spread and multiplied, they would slowly transform the entire planet. The process would be like planting seeds. Instead of trying to move mountains, it would take longer, but require much less energy and resources. Nature was good at making changes gradually if you gave it the right tools. Both aliens stared at their calculations in amazement. Casey's approach would reduce terraforming costs by 95%. Planets could be made habitable using resources that most civilizations already possessed. Casey finished prepping vegetables and started on the lunch sandwiches. She had learned to work efficiently during quiet periods, so she would not fall behind when things got busy. The lunch rush could be chaotic if you were not prepared. Dr. Velnash asked Casey how she saw patterns that escaped advanced civilizations. The problems she solved were considered among the most challenging in galactic science, yet she made solutions look effortless. Casey said she had always been good at seeing what was actually there, instead of what people expected to see. Math teachers had sometimes gotten frustrated with her because she would solve problems using methods that were not in the textbook. Commander Thorne wanted to know if Casey ever considered that her casual approach might be exactly what galactic science needed. Perhaps advanced civilizations had become too focused on complexity and had forgotten the value of simple solutions. Casey shrugged and said maybe, but she still preferred making sandwiches. Science problems led to more science problems. Once you solved one equation, people expected you to solve 10 more. There was no end to it. The aliens tried to explain how important her discoveries were. Entire species would benefit from faster travel and better energy sources and habitable planets. She could change the course of galactic history. Casey said that sounded like a lot of responsibility. She had never wanted to change history or help entire species. She just wanted to do her job well and have enough money to pay rent and buy groceries. Dr. Val Nash was beginning to understand something profound about human nature. The galaxy had assumed that the most advanced solutions would come from the most advanced minds. But Casey represented a different kind of intelligence entirely. She did not solve problems to gain fame or advance her career or impress other scientists. She solved them because they were there and needed solving. Her mind was not cluttered with preconceptions about what solutions should look like. The lunch rush began, and Casey focused on serving customers. She made each sandwich with the same care and attention she applied to galactic mathematics. Every ingredient was perfectly balanced and arranged exactly right. Dr. Val Nash watched Casey work and realized she was seeing genius in its purest form. Not the complicated self-aware genius that most advanced civilizations produced, but something simpler and more powerful. Casey Thompson had revolutionized galactic science, not despite her casual attitude, but because of it. 6 months after first contact, Casey Thompson was still working at Mel's Corner Deli despite having received job offers from every major scientific institution in the galaxy. Universities had offered her full professorships without requiring any teaching. Research institutes had promised unlimited budgets and complete freedom to study whatever interested her. The Galactic Science Consortium had even offered to make her the first human member of their governing council. The position came with its own research station the size of a small moon and a staff of the brightest minds from 17 different species. Casey had turned them all down politely but firmly. She liked making sandwiches. The work was simple and satisfying. At the end of each day, she could see exactly what she had accomplished, and people were happy with the results. Dr. Val Nash had become a regular customer at the deli. She came in every few days, ostensibly to try different sandwiches, but really to continue learning from Casey. The crystal alien had given up trying to understand human logic and simply accepted that genius came in unexpected forms. What the alien scientists did not know was that Casey had quietly solved 3 more supposedly impossible problems during her lunch breaks. She had written the solutions on napkins and left them where Dr. Val Nash would find them by accident. The cure for ethereal phase sickness had been scribbled next to a grocery list. The solution involved treating the condition as a resonance problem instead of a medical one. Ethereal beings got sick when their energy patterns fell out of sync with local space-time. The cure was basically cosmic tuning. A method for generating clean energy from quantum fluctuations was written on the back of a receipt. Casey had noticed that the aliens were trying to extract energy from the wrong kind of fluctuations. The universe was full of tiny energy differences that could be harvested safely if you knew where to look. The third solution dealt with faster than light communication without the usual signal degradation. Casey had realized that information could be transmitted through folded space dimensions where distance worked differently. Messages could arrive before they were sent if you aimed them at the right dimensional angle. Each discovery had triggered another wave of excitement throughout the galactic scientific community. Papers were written, conferences were held. Species that had been enemies for centuries began working together to implement Casey's ideas. The galaxy was entering what historians would later call the golden age of simple solutions. Scientific advancement accelerated as researchers learned to question their basic assumptions and look for elegant answers to complex problems. Dr. Val Nash sat at her usual table in the corner of the deli, reviewing the latest research reports. Teams across the galaxy were applying Casey's principles to problems that had seemed hopeless. Success rates were climbing dramatically. Casey worked at the sandwich station with her characteristic calm efficiency. She had perfected a new combination of turkey and Swiss with a special mustard blend that was becoming popular with customers. The recipe had taken her 3 weeks to get exactly right. The lunch rush brought its usual mix of office workers and students. Casey served each customer with the same friendly professionalism she had always shown. Nobody except Dr. Vel Nash knew that the woman making their sandwiches had revolutionized galactic civilization. A group of college students ordered complicated sandwiches with detailed specifications. Casey listened carefully to each request and built the sandwiches exactly as asked. She took pride in getting every detail right, even when the orders were unreasonable. Dr. Vel Nash watched Casey work and marveled at the contradiction. She represented. The human had solved problems that had stumped entire civilizations but seemed most satisfied when making simple food for hungry people. After the lunch rush ended, Casey began cleaning the sandwich station. She worked methodically, wiping down surfaces and organizing ingredients for the next day. The repetitive tasks helped her think clearly without pressure. Dr. Vel Nash approached the counter and asked a question that had been bothering her for months. She wanted to know if Casey ever wondered what she could accomplish if she really applied herself to science instead of making sandwiches. Casey considered the question while washing lettuce. She said she had thought about it sometimes, but decided she liked her life the way it was. Science seemed to involve a lot of stress and competition and people taking themselves too seriously. The alien scientist asked if Casey realized how much good she could do for the galaxy. Her insights could solve hunger and disease and war. Entire species could benefit from her unique way of thinking about problems. Casey said that sounded nice, but also sounded like a lot of work. She preferred problems that stayed solved once you fixed them. Scientific breakthroughs seemed to create more questions than they answered. There was never an end to it. Dr. Vel Nash tried a different approach. She asked Casey what she thought was the most important thing she had accomplished since they first met. Was it the faster-than-light travel, or the energy generation, or the terraforming techniques? Casey thought about it while restocking napkins. She said probably the new sandwich recipe she had developed. It made people happy, and nobody got hurt in the process. The flavors balanced perfectly, and the ingredients were easy to find. The crystal alien realized she was hearing something profound about human values. Casey measured success not by the scope of problems solved, but by the happiness created. A perfect sandwich mattered as much as a perfect equation, if it made someone smile. Commander Thorne materialized near the counter during the afternoon. Lol. Her ethereal form was completely stable now that she had learned to manage her excitement around Casey. She brought news from the Galactic Council. The faster-than-light travel system was now operational across 12 star systems. Trade and communication were flourishing. Several long-standing conflicts had ended simply because different species could finally talk to each other easily. Casey said that was good news while refilling the coffee machine. She asked if the new travel system was causing any problems. Sometimes when you fixed one thing you accidentally broke something else. Commander Thorne assured her that everything was working perfectly. Casey's solutions were elegant and stable. They seemed to fix problems without creating new ones. That was apparently rare in galactic engineering. The conversation was interrupted by a customer who wanted a sandwich recommendation. Casey suggested the turkey and Swiss with her special mustard blend. The customer ordered it and left looking satisfied after the first bite. Dr. Vel Nash asked Casey if she understood why her solutions worked so well when more complex approaches failed. What made her insights different from those of advanced civilizations? Casey said she thought maybe smart people sometimes made things harder than they needed to be. When you had access to powerful tools and unlimited resources, you might forget to try simple solutions first. It was like using a computer to add 2+. to when you could just count on your fingers. The computer might give you the right answer, but counting was faster and less likely to break down. Commander Thorne mentioned that several universities wanted to study Casey's problem-solving methods. They hoped to develop teaching techniques that would help other minds think more like hers. Casey said they could try, but doubted it would work. She had always thought differently from other people. Teachers had sometimes gotten frustrated with her because she would not follow standard procedures even. When they worked, the afternoon passed quietly with only a few customers. Casey used the slow time to prepare for the dinner shift and think about what she would make for her own lunch tomorrow. She was considering trying a new combination with roast beef and cheddar cheese. As closing time approached, Dr. Velnash prepared to leave. She asked Casey one final question. Did she ever feel like she was wasting her talents by working in a deli, instead of solving the great problems of the universe? Casey finished wiping down the counter and considered her answer carefully. She said she did not think she was wasting anything. Every problem was important to someone. Making good sandwiches was just as valuable as making good equations if it made people's lives better. The galaxy had plenty of smart people working on big, important things. Maybe it needed at least one person who focused on small, simple things and did them really well. Dr. Velnash left the deli understanding something new about wisdom and intelligence and the value of contentment. Casey Thompson had taught the galaxy that sometimes the most profound discoveries came not from those who reached for the stars, but from those who were satisfied making sandwiches one perfect bite at a time. Outside the deli, ships from a dozen different star systems waited to carry Casey's ideas to the far corners of the galaxy. Inside, Casey turned off the lights and headed home to her small apartment, where she would spend the evening watching television and not thinking about saving the universe.